what did the Committee on Physical Infrastructure in Parliament recommend on the Uganda National Roads Authority Amendment Bill? So, just before we get into the committee report, the idea is that this bill sought to rationalize UNRA, that's the Uganda National Roads Authority, back to the ministry. Now, this decision did not come out of the blue. It stems from the NRM's promise in their 2021-2026 manifesto. If you go to their manifesto, point 2.29, you realize that they say they want to implement certain expenditure control measures. And if you still go to the bottom of the page, you realize that they identify the whole idea that they are going to stop agencification and allowanceification. And that's the decision they later take after they got power on the 22nd of February 2021 to say that they are going to rationalize government agencies, and one of them was the agency called the Uganda National Roads Authority. So the idea here is this is a decision that stems from promises they made from the election, but also which comes from the research which the Operation Wealth Creation did, as you can see on the screen. So let's dive right into the breakdown of the report. This bill was read for the first time on 24 September 2024. So whenever a bill is read for the first time, the Speaker of Parliament, according to Rule 129 of the Rules of Procedure of Parliament, assigns a specific committee to handle that specific bill. The committee that was chosen is the Committee on Physical Infrastructure. Normally, a committee has 30 to 45 days to process a bill, and in this very regard, that was a committee that got that specific objective. So, in so doing, a committee chooses a methodology that it is going to use to inquire into whatever is sent from Parliament to its business. And as you can see on the screen, the committee held meetings and received memoranda from the following: 1. From the Ministry of Works and Transport. 2. From the Uganda National Roads Authority. 3. From the Ministry of Public Service. 4. From the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. And lastly, from the Office of the Attorney General. And now it's important to understand that committees normally seek stakeholder input. Anyone who has a stake, an interest in that bill, is able to apply to present to that very committee. But committees also have the power to summon some people to make their case or to answer the questions of the committee such that they can arrive at a specific decision. So normally when a committee then has done its inquiries, it then starts its own processes internally, and normally they classify them into issues, and that's like the first issue you see on the screen. And there are a number of issues that the committee looks at, as you can see on the screen. First is on the adherence of this specific bill to the certificate of financial implications and the issues that came thereof. 2 is about how the ongoing works that were being done by the Uganda National Roads Authority will continue. 3, how the transition is going to be managed, especially since UNRA has one of the biggest ongoing portfolio, which is up to 9 trillion, as I will be showing you later. 4, it's about the issue of duplication of functions and mandate overlaps. 5 is the need to relieve government of financial drain on the resource envelope through wasteful administrative expenditure, which is basically the whole purpose of rationalization. 7, and this was, I think, one of the biggest issues that emerged, which was on the question of staff pay disparities between UNRA and the ministry. And these were very, very, very pertinent issues, especially around staff pay. 7, because there are so many issues that they were seeking to interrogate. The question of enhancement of the efficiency to enable government to play its better role effectively, rather than it creating agencies to cater for their own fundamental shortfalls. And then it proceeds to 8, and these are very many issues. And if you read like the Coffee Amendment Bill report of the Committee on Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, they had about 4 to 5. UNRWA is going up to 8, you can imagine. Now the 8th issue was management of the rationalization and mainstreaming process, and there's quite a lot of data that we are going to be discussing here. So sit back, relax, and let us walk you through the issues that specific report brings. It's a 182 page report. 182, you can imagine, right? 182. So on the first issue, which is on the certificate of financial implications, as you can see on the screen, the committee observes that the Minister of Finance, yes, submits a certificate of financial implications for that specific bill. And I think that's specifically important, because for every bill to come into force, the one who is pushing for the bill must seek a certificate of financial implications to see whether that very bill is not going to cost the national treasury. And the committee on this very issue recommended that government should consider settling the severance pay for UNRWA staff as guided by Attorney General. So the idea here is, if you're letting go of staff, but they still had running contracts, you would need to first compensate them. And this was a recommendation letter from the Attorney General's office, and there are so many attachments on this to avoid potential litigation and ensure a smooth transition. Because the moment you let go people in like a haphazard way, within their right, they can sue you, and you are forced to even pay more than you were supposed to pay. Okay, that's issue 1, right? On like the certificate of financial implications. Now let's go to the ongoing works by UNRWA. I think you could have seen in the news, and as you can see on the screen, the World Bank put a pause on the projects it was funding through UNRWA when it learned that this very process of rationalization was beginning. And the committee still makes the same observation, that some of the existing contracts between development partners, multilateral development partners, contain clauses that bind the government to a specific implementing agency, notably UNRWA. And over the years, it has been donor behavior to not work with the main ministries and work with agencies. The idea there is that they believe that there is less corruption in agencies, that there are less impeding bureaucracies within agencies than there are with ministries. So because the clauses say that it's an agreement between UNRWA and a multilateral development partner, then that contract gets some challenges, since UNRWA would have now been rationalized by those very agencies. And the idea there is that any deviation from the contractual terms, including the transfer of projects to alternative agencies, triggers severe consequences such as partial or full suspension of those specific projects. And these loans go from loan agreements between government of Uganda, the African Development Bank for the Raropi, Moyo Afoji, Katuna Mukono Kamgangs Road project for those who are coming from Kigezi and Kabare. And you could just really see Annex 2, which we are projecting on the screen. It has all these projects which are going to be affected. And the committee has a number of recommendations there that you can see on the screen on this issue, on how we can handle the ongoing projects within the Uganda National Roads Authority. And as you can see, those recommendations there, that we need to step into this arena cautiously in order to ensure we are not causing more harm. Now let's go to the third issue, right? The third issue which the committee seeks to interrogate, which is on how the transition would be managed, given that UNRWA has one of the largest project portfolios, and these are projects that are worth 9 trillion. 9 trillion, that's huge. And the committee in this case makes a very profound recommendation, and it is highlighted on the screen, that a transitional management period of 3 years to ensure a seamless handover of this portfolio is contained, such that this phased approach enables the ministry to absorb UNRWA's responsibilities, mitigate potential disruptions, and guarantee uninterrupted road development and maintenance. And the idea here is that yes, the ministry could have the competencies, but these are two different institutions. And as you're going to be seeing, the wages of UNRWA are way higher. They go into a number of digits than the wages that are coming from the ministry, and as I'm going to be showing you, which shows that there's a huge disparity. Someone can call it a difference between UNRWA and the Ministry of Works and Transport. And this is the issue that was coming in there, right? That at least let's have those 36 months or 3 years to allow for the smooth transition, as you can see on the screen. Okay, the fourth issue that they interrogate is on the question of duplication of functions and mandate overlaps. So the idea of rationalization is that government at one point in time felt like it had so many people doing the same thing. Yeah, it's more or less like you have 5 people who are doing the same work which can be done by one person. So they wanted to rationalize, cut expenditure, streamline the operations by ensuring that there's just one person that is doing the work. And the committee makes quite a profound observation, right? That there are overlapping responsibilities in managing national roads network, which lead to inefficiencies and wastage of fundamental resources, and that's quite vital, because I think that can be a point of stasis around the whole idea of the moment you duplicate administration structures, then that creates a bit of the problem. And a number of observations, as you can see on the screen. Let me go to B, because I think one is clear. B indicates that both the ministry and UNRWA, they have support functions, and these are like functions that support the technical wing, which is human resources, administration, procurement, internal audits, communication, the legal office, social safeguards. The idea is that these offices are both in UNRWA and the ministry. And the idea is that if you phase out all these functions, the human resources, management, administration, procurement, accounts, internal audits, if you phase all these out and then you just have one in the ministry, one procurement office, one human resource office, one administration office, one procurement offices, that eliminates all that bulk of money you are wasting there. Now, as you can really see, UNRWA has 6 regional offices and 23 up-country stations, while the ministry has 4 regional mechanical workshops or zonal equipment centers situated in the same regions. And the idea here is that let's merge both and let's consolidate. Rather than having UNRWA and Ministry of Works, it is now just Ministry of Works. So the concept there is that duplication is there and it could be stopped, right? Okay, so that's the fourth issue. That's the fourth issue on the question of whether there is duplication of mandate and how the rationalization then cuts costs. Let's go to maybe the fifth, right? Which is the need to relieve government of the financial drain on resources through wasteful administrative expenditure. And I think this has quite a direct link to the former one. The idea is that administration is okay, but when you have too many people doing the same thing, that becomes a problem, because government is spending money. And even when it is employing people, this has a financial strain on those that are following up, and this is very vital and needs to be understood by those that are pushing for the same. And for example, if you look at still on that report, you realize that in that government facility, government spends 10% on employee contribution to NSF, and that's money, yeah, and it is also paying them, right? So the principle here is that the money you would rather be paying to these specific people, you would rather pay to one group of people. Maybe that motivates them to perhaps work harder. I don't know. The idea here is that we should not ensure that we are having duplication of these very offices. Now let's go to the elephant in the room. My goodness, this was like the hugest debate, and I think most MPs that were against it, or people even within URA, this was the biggest issue. Now, as you can see on the screen, that's the question of staff pay disparities between UNRWA and the ministry. Let me read. The committee was informed that UNRWA has a staff structure of over 1,544 staff with, now remember, and this is important, with 1,358 permanent staff. You can imagine, it has 1,544 staff with 1,358 staff, with 151 on a contingent short-term contract staff and 35 senior management. Now, the Pandora box is like here, like the can of worms is here. The total wage bill of these 1,544 is 71.11 billion. You can imagine, right? 71.11 billion. That wage bill is huge. Let me try and contrast it with the ministry staffing level. The ministry had only 529 staff. Their wage bill was just 17.220 billion. You can imagine, almost over 4 times the wage bill of UNRWA, of an agency within a ministry, was almost 4 times. And that's just the wage bill. We haven't gotten to other dynamics. So the idea here is that people within the agency were earning way more money than people at the ministry. So it's more or less like the one who is supervising you earns less than you who is supervising them. I don't know how that relationship works out, right? But the idea is that the huge UNRWA staffing levels and subsequent wage bill, in the opinion of the committee, results into financial drain on resources and unreasonable administrative expenditure within the sector, all of which defeats government objective of cost cutting. And the committee has quite a profound recommendation in the light of these statistics that we've just shown, that this agency has to be rationalized, and it was, as you could have seen on the screen. Now let's go to the other issue, and this issue is quite important. It's a subset of staff pay disparities. So the idea here is that UNRWA makes its revenue corrections, but these revenue corrections, they have a very limited effect on the consolidated fund, because, for example, they correct about 3.7 billion per month from the Kampala Expressway, but it goes into the consolidated fund, and as you are aware, that's the statutory expenditure, like it's a loan, right? The idea is that you're taking in a bit more than you're like giving back, and this is quite important, as you can see on the numbers on the screen. So yeah, and that informs still the conclusion still on that very subsection, that this is wasteful and we need to spend less and achieve more, like have a lean government and see how you are able to get more. Let's go to the 7th issue as we come to a close. The 7th issue is on the question of the enhancement of efficiency to enable government to play its proper role more effectively. So one of the strongest criticism for rationalization is that government is inefficient. As a result, these agencies should not go back to government. The idea is that these agencies, they are working in a culture which is not government-like. And I think this very inquiry then points to the idea that government need be efficient because it is handling public resources. It does not need to resign to the idea that for them they should not have any form of efficiency because they are government, and that's the rationale that they are trying to have. And a number of issues emerge here that it's important to ensure that the wheels of the transition are greased, and Mofped and Attorney General are quite vivid on this. If you go to page 13 of this report, at the top you will see that the Attorney General and Mofped are being advised to ensure that the transition is smooth, such that the work culture that came from the agency can now get into the mother ministry. And this is really vital. And they say all pending and ongoing 368 civil cases and 15 criminal cases, which were compiled for handover from the Attorney General, are effectively managed to ensure we are not having serious issues that are coming into this specific regard. And I think this is vital. Now, the conclusion that the committee arrives at, and this is vital, is that the committee then recommends that government should consider maintaining attractive salary packages and benefits of staff in the ministries to attract highly skilled personnel as those of UNRWA. So at the principal level, from public administration, agencies are created because ordinarily the salary structure of government is really low to attract like the most skilled people. Those normally go to civil society. So the recommendation of the committee is that let government also pay aware, such that people don't have to go to agencies or don't have to go to the private sector. That's the idea, right? That let them pay well to attract highly skilled people. Two, that priority for recruitment should be given to staff of UNRWA during recruitment, and it should only open upon satisfaction that all qualified and interested UNRWA staff have been absorbed into the process. Now, lastly, and as I indicated, which is the eighth, is on how the whole process will be managed. The process, which is on the management of the rationalization and administering process. Remember, the committee had recommended that let's have 3 years. Let's not just like rationalize it as a block. And the committee observes that under Clause 6 provides for the payment of terminal benefits of the board member and staff of UNRWA in order to ensure that we reduce litigation and complaints in the courts of laws. And all these addendums, you can find them in the report. And as you can see on the screen, the conclusion is very clear. Let's rationalize, but let's ensure we rationalize after we have ensured that the ministry has developed the capacity to handle the good work that the Uganda National Revenue Authority Bill. Those were the observations of the Committee on Physical Infrastructure on the Ugandan National Roads Authority Amendment Bill 2024.